Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers looking for creative teaching strategies delivered in the 11 or so minutes of free time they have to actually listen. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm happy to welcome you to Episode 3, all about free choice reading in the ELA classroom. So what exactly is free choice reading? Well, let me tell you a quick story. After years of touting the merits of letting students choose exactly what they want to read in my independent reading program, no matter what administrators may think of their choices, I had to take a good hard look at my own views one day at the library with my 5-year-old son. He wanted a stack of about 25 superhero books filled with scary moments and laser battles. A far cry from my usual selection of books like Franklin and the Tooth Fairy and Curious George Makes a Pizza. But I let him get what he wanted, and he proceeded to spend the next 3 hours, far longer than he has ever spent with a book, examining them. Even though he can't read yet, he pored over the pictures, and I could practically feel the wheels turning in the direction of learning to read. Free choice reading in the classroom can take many forms, but the goal of it is to give students the exact same opportunity that my son had, the opportunity to choose the books they really want and fall in love with reading. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about some of the strategies I've used to build a successful outside reading program that gives students free choice. I first got interested in free choice reading when I was teaching abroad in Sofia, Bulgaria. And my students were amazing English students, such wonderful, interesting people. And they were coming to English literature kind of later in their lives. They had come to our school and begun an American curriculum in 8th grade. So they hadn't necessarily done a lot of reading for fun in English. And that's what got me on this track. I wanted them to fall in love with English literature. So I was looking around trying to figure out what kind of program I could launch to get them to fall more in love with literature, because while they were enjoying our classroom curriculum, I felt like I could get them a little more hooked if I could come up with a good program. And I stumbled upon Nancy Atwell and her book, The Reading Zone. It was the first time I discovered that I could get Amazon to deliver to me in Bulgaria, which was a very helpful discovery. So I read The Reading Zone, and I started thinking about how I wanted to implement some of her ideas and some of my own ideas into my classroom. And though there are a lot of different ways that you could include free choice reading in your curriculum, what I'm going to focus on here is the main idea that I came up with, which was to do a complementary program. So I wasn't going to change much of anything about the mandated curriculum that I had from my school. I was going to continue with that, but I was going to come up with this separate program that would be happening at the same time. And that's what I would really recommend to you. That way you don't have to get a lot of approval. You don't have to change what you're already doing. You don't have to get everybody on your team to necessarily agree, which can be difficult. And you can just do your own amazing outside reading program with free choice. So let me explain how I did it and how you can do it. We're going to start with 4 simple steps. The first step is to get some books into your classroom. I think this is really critical. For a lot of our students who aren't already readers, they need to see amazing books right in front of them. If you send them to the library and say, hey, choose a book you love, they're going to walk into the library and have no idea where to start, and they're probably not going to end up with a book that they love. So if you bring in a bunch of books that you know they're going to love, you're going to start a couple of levels up. You're going to have a really good jump start. So get some books that you love, that students in your past history have loved. You can check out the list that I'm going to post in my show notes of books that my students have loved. Gather books. You can go to library sales. You can just borrow books from your own school library. So it's kind of your own curated library if you have a good relationship with your librarian. You can buy books at Goodwill, at rummage sales. You can order them from Powell's. You can enter giveaways. There are a lot of ways to start gathering books. Once you do it, you'll discover you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can also apply for funding from your department, from your school. There are different ways to get some money to support your quest for books. So once you have a bookshelf, you want to make it attractive, display the books as best you can, take a lesson from primary teachers and display at least some of them with the covers facing out and not just all sort of hidden away in a giant stack on the shelf. So once you have this attractive library, your next step is going to be to start to pitch it to your students. So as you begin to introduce your program, maybe once a day or a couple times a day, a couple times a week, pull out a book and say, oh, you guys, you have to check out this book. It's called Anne of Green Gables. It's about an orphan who comes to live with two older people in Prince Edward Island, Canada. And she's an amazing person who's always finding herself in trouble. And this is the story of her life as a teenager, growing up, falling in love, making best friends, figuring out her life. It was my favorite book when I was younger. I've read it at least 6 times, and I think you should read it too. And you just kind of show it off around the room, and then you can either put it on the shelf again, or you can hand it off to the first student who kind of waves their hand toward you and says, oh, I want that. And the more you do that and you're just kind of pitching books, the more students are going to realize, hey, this bookshelf is full of awesome opportunities for me to read, instead of just being like, oh, a bookshelf, which is not what we're going for, right, guys? So do a lot of book talks. And then the next step out of the 4, so this is step number 3, you've got your books, you've pitched some of the books. As you get your students reading, don't just send them home to read. Give them some opportunities in class to read. Maybe it's on Fridays, maybe it's after vocabulary quizzes, maybe it's how you want to start your week each week. Give them 15 or 20 minutes. And you may feel like this is a waste of class time. I hope you don't. But just in case you do, let me explain. If you have them reading in class and you begin the first 5 minutes and just pick out a book that you really love and read it with them, but then start to peek up and look around and see who looks like they're loving their book and they're totally engaged. You can just leave those students alone. Do not interrupt them. But who looks like their mind is drifting? They are not focused on the book. They keep checking their watch. They're looking to see what their friends are doing. They're looking over at the door. That's a student you want to walk over to and say, hey, Amy, and she'll tell you, but she'll probably sound kind of frustrated or bored. And you can say, oh, well, why don't you try this book? It's called The Maze Runner, or whatever you think that Amy would actually like, instead of whatever book she's picked out. And if you have no idea what Amy would like, just start a little conversation with her. Say, what's your favorite book? What's the last book you read that you really liked? What genre of books do you like? And try to get Amy hooked up with a book that she would like. And then you're going to have an engaged reader in those sessions, and move on to the next student who's looking bored. That's why these reading sessions in class are important. They're your opportunity to see who's loving their book and who needs your help. If students forget their book during the reading session, it's no big deal because you have all these awesome books in your classroom library. You can just point them over there and say, well, grab a different book. It can be maybe the next book that you read, and you can get a jump start on it today in class. So you do these reading sessions and check-ins in class. The last step with just getting your basic program going is to have a structured assignment, maybe for each term or for each semester or for the whole year. However often you want to be checking in with an actual formal assignment. For me, I do it each term. My assignment is a book review. So it's not a formal analysis at all. What I ask them to do is talk about each book that they've read in about a 1-page typed up summary. Or I shouldn't say summary because it's really not a summary. It's the opposite. What they're trying to do is talk about what they like about the book, what they don't like about the book. I say, if you review this book positively and you actually hated it, you're doing me and anybody else who takes a look at your review a disservice. You don't have to pretend that you liked a book to prove to me that you read it. So tell me, which characters did you like? Which didn't you like? What about the plot was intriguing to you? And write it in a review style. It's not analysis. It's not summary. And so I have students do that for each book that they've read, and I do a differentiated assignment. So I say, if you want to earn an A on this small part of your term grade, you need to read at least 500 pages. If you Want to earn a B, you need to read at least 400 pages, etc., etc. But you can create your basic assignment in whatever way you want. You can do book talks, you can do a book journal, you can have students conference with you to talk about their books. Is there a chance that some students will cheat on this assignment and read some really good summaries on Amazon? Yeah, I guess, maybe, but because you're checking in with them during the daily reading or the weekly reading sessions, I don't think that that's as big of an issue, because you're seeing where they are in their books, you're seeing whether they like it or not, and that gives you a really good way to have a realistic view of their reading. So once you have your basic assignment, you've got your students reading on a weekly basis, you're occasionally jumping in with book talks, maybe inviting students to do some book talks once they've begun to finish books and found some books that they've loved, you can start to develop a few more twists to your program. So in this section of the podcast, I'm going to tell you about 6 fun twists that I've developed over the years. These are just ways to spark the program, make it a little more exciting for your students. So the first one, and this is how I started with my very first group of students in my very first outside reading assignment, I did a classroom competition, and I did an individual and a class versus class competition. You can do a competition however you want. You can do it for a week, a month, the whole term, the whole year. You can have the prize be something like a get out of homework free card, or your whole class gets a picnic if you read this number of pages, or I'll take you out for ice cream if you're the winner, whatever it is. I've done all kinds of different prizes and they've all been fun. So when I do a competition, I usually have weekly check-ins where the students report the number of pages and what book they're reading at the moment. And then I put up fun little winner, second place, third place check-ins. So they can see on the wall, okay, this student has read 700 pages already in the first 2 weeks and they're in first. And this student has read 200 pages and they're in second. So the first place winner is really in first place. And I'm always surprised when I put up those sheets. It does seem to generate a lot of buzz and a lot of enthusiasm around the reading contest. So reading contests are a really fun twist. It doesn't need to be part of their grade at all. It's just for the joy of it. I've had students read thousands and thousands of ungraded pages just to try to win something like a picnic. And I think what it really does is help them fall in love with reading, and then they're just reading because they love it. They may start Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone to try to win the contest, but after about 8 pages, they just don't want to go to bed at night until they've finished it. And that's exactly what I want for them. And you may be thinking in the back of your mind right now, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, that's not very impressive reading. And I want to just stop you in your tracks. That's a natural reaction, and I've run into it a lot. But what I've seen over years of having an outside reading program is that students start where they are, right? Like my son started with superhero books, but then they move on. Once you've read all the Harry Potter books, you're looking for something else. Once you've read the Hunger Games, what's your next step? What's your next step after that, and your next step after that? Students just continue to develop as readers, and it's amazing to watch. I've seen people go from light fluff beach reads to serious Russian literature, and it's amazing. All right, but to get back to my fun twist, so we started with competitions. The second fun twist is kind of similar. I've done fun challenges. So for a challenge, I might say, okay, guys, we're having a long weekend. The challenge for this long weekend is to read The Outsiders. If you read The Outsiders, if you finish, you get to come to my special dessert party next week at lunch, and we're going to talk about The Outsiders, and we're going to have ice cream sundaes, or whatever it is. Whatever you decide, you're going to award the people who complete the challenge. And it's really fun. It's just a little way, again, to kick up some interest around your program. And you can also say, and remember, if you read it and you complete the challenge, you can use this as part of your assignment. You may already be completely done with our term assignment if you participate in this challenge, or you may be halfway done. Another fun thing that I've done for a twist is an outside reading festival. This works really well at the end of term or the end of the year, you can have students create some kind of a project surrounding one of the books that they've read. And you can invite students from the younger grades to come and view these projects, maybe have some food, a little music, have them wander the classroom and see what the older kids are reading. And here you're generating interest in reading throughout the school, and you're developing an excitement for your own program amongst the students that you're going to be getting the next year or 2 years down the line, which I think is pretty great. Number 4, the fourth fun twist. I love designing reading posters for my school. So you know how you go to the library and you see President Obama on a big poster that says read, and it shows him with one of his favorite books. I like to do this kind of thing with my students and with other teachers at the school. So I have them hold up their favorite book and I take a picture of them. I ask for their permission to make it into a poster, of course. And then I use a tool at Big Huge Labs online, and I'm going to link that in the show notes. It's so easy. It's called the Motivational Poster Maker, and you just put their picture in and then you add your text down below. So one easy way to get these posters is to have guest teachers come into your class and do book talks. And this is our 5th fun twist. So I love doing this. You can invite administrators, teachers, parents, anybody you want to come into your class and talk about their favorite book. And it just takes like 3 minutes of their time, and it's a really neat way for your students to see other adults who love to read and to be inspired by them. So whenever I have a teacher come in to give one of these little guest pitches, then I take a picture of them with their favorite book and I make a poster out of it. So finally, we have the 6th fun twist, and I have really enjoyed doing this. I make a class reading blog with my students. So at the end of a term or midway through the term, I pass out a little index card to every student and I say, just write a few sentences about a book that you've liked lately. So it can be one that you're reading right now. It can be one that you read last term. It can be one that you finished over the summer, but some fantastic book that you want to recommend to your peers. And I take those recommendations and I put them online on a Blogger blog. It's free. It's so easy to set up. And I usually just put a little picture of the book and the blurb about the book underneath. And it does take a little bit of time, but I also put one of those maps that shows the hits from all over the world in the sidebar. And I find that students just love seeing that kids from all over the world are seeing their book recommendations. So not only do they have a blog that they can go to when they need an idea for something to read, they've got, the ideas that we share in class, but they can also go online and see student recommendations from their class and from other classes and from years past to get ideas for books that they're going to love. And when they can do that, and when they can see that students in China and students in Afghanistan and students in New Zealand are doing the same thing and getting those ideas, I think they're really inspired by that, and they like being part of a world community of readers and feeling like they are actually influencing the reading choices of teenagers far, far away. So I think that's a wrap. Those are the 4 basic steps for starting your own complimentary outside reading program with free choice. And those are 6 fun twists that you can give students to help spark their imagination and their enthusiasm for reading. Thanks for listening. I'm putting my list of best books for an outside reading library in the show notes today. So if you'd like to check it out, just go to www.nowsparkcreativity.com and click on the podcast link at the top of the page. Be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes so you don't miss the upcoming episodes on theater in the classroom and teacher collaborations.